Look, folks, it may be May, but there is no offseason in the National Football League, especially in the fantasy football streets. Stay tuned for our Dynasty Tight End rankings to see who you should be targeting this season. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus. What is up, folks? I am one of your hosts here, the DGen Doc. More importantly, I am joined by my brother in degeneracy, Mr. Derek Bennett, aka Professor Locks. How we doing tonight?
What's up, Doc? How you doing on this Saturday morning?
I was gonna say I'm so used to tonight that yes, this is a morning.
Oh.
If you can see with the bags under my eyes, one of us is a night person, one of us is not a morning person. What number coffee are you on?
This is about two and a half down, half to go.
Yeah, so my third sip of water this morning. So that tells you a little bit of the difference here between your hosts. But hey, we got to get this information out to you.
Got to caffeinate and dominate, man. Let's go.
Caffeinate and dominate is absolutely insane. But look, man, we are kicking off a new series here. We're going to do some dynasty rankings. So why don't you tell, what's the difference for those that are maybe unaware or you've heard of dynasty but don't really know what it is? What's the difference we're talking about between dynasty and redraft?
Yeah, so your traditional fantasy leagues that are basically one season, that's your typical redraft. So, you might have a group of friends that you do a fantasy league every year, but every year you have a draft. That's a redraft. With dynasty, you basically keep the same dudes on your roster. So you're trying to almost look at the future and kind of project 3, 4, 5 years out and see how guys are going to be doing. You got to take in guys getting older and retiring, guys getting traded to a different team, because you're going to have the same guys on your team. It's kind of like a closer to an NFL roster, right?
Yeah.
Where you have most of the guys coming back.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Like, think your dynasty mode in Madden or
Right.
college football, right? You're trying to project career longevity is the biggest thing.
Yep.
We're gonna kind of do our projections based on 3 to 5 years. I think anything past 5 years is you're getting a little bold,
pretty tough.
right? Yeah, I think that's a little wild to start projecting out 10 years for guys. It's hard enough to try to predict 3 to 5. I think 10's a little bit ambitious. So
Right.
that's how we're gonna do it. The show structure is gonna be pretty simple. We've got our top 15. We're starting off with an honorable mention section, not just miss the top 15. Then we've got 3 tiers going from the top 15. We are going to go kind of from bottom to the top there. We're going to start with the honorable mention. Then we'll go tier 3, tier 2, and then we'll finalize with our top 5 and do the big reveal of who our number 1 dynasty tight end is. But I think at the top, just kind of big picture, the top of the board is probably it's hard to less argument there.
Yeah,
I think really the tier 2, tier 3 is where you
yeah, because I mean,
debates.
usually like when we're doing our bets and talking, on most episodes, we don't really compare ahead of time. But for this list, we did have to kind of compare because sometimes I had a guy listed at 7th and you had him all the way up at 12th, and we did kind of have to jumble some guys around last minute. But yeah, top 5, we were pretty much.
Yeah, I think
that on.
Maybe 1 or 2 spots you can argue, but I think in general consensus, there's 5 guys that really separate themselves as true studs. But hey, let's just get right into it. So why don't we start with our honorable mentions, the guys that just missed the top 15 there. We've got Dalton Kincaid, Buffalo Bills tight end, Cade Otton, and then we've got Isaiah Likely, obviously, for the Ravens. So why don't you start talking about Dalton Kincaid? It was a guy that you liked maybe a little bit better than me. You give him the kind of the pro case. What's and I'll come in as the bad cop here.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dalton Kincaid is just a younger guy with a shit ton of athleticism on a Buffalo Bills team that, like, wide receiver position, they don't have any like number ones. I mean, Khalil Shakir is like right on the edge there, but like outside of him, they just have a bunch of dudes that it's kind of similar to like Green Bay's situation. They have a bunch of like fringe twos kind of a thing. They don't really have a great pair of wide receivers. So that's part of the reason why. Now, obviously, they still have Dawson Knox there. I think Kincaid will start to take over that role a little bit more over the next 2-3 years. But you have the best quarterback in the league MVP in Josh Allen there, tossing the ball. I just think he's got some growing to do, obviously, and I think his role is going to increase over the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, I think that's the pro case, and then I'll come in bad cop here. Everything in the world was set up for Dalton Kincaid to succeed, to take that real step forward last season, and he was very much a disappointment. He only had he
For sure.
played in 13 games, so he dealt with some injury things. 44 receptions, 448 yards, and only 2 touchdowns. He only had about 130 yards more than Dawson Knox. So I really, it was his season to separate, and I just didn't see it from him. I agree the potential is there. But
Mm-hmm.
I think last season, at least for me, left a really kind of poor taste in my mouth. So I think he's a guy who was competing, and that was kind of a little bit of a debate. But
Yep.
that's where I think he falls outside of this top 15 because everything was set up for him to do this last season, and he just did not deliver. So,
Right.
and maybe him dropping that ball in the AFC Championship to lose them their season, probably. Maybe that left a
Fair.
little bit of sour
That's
in
true.
the mouth there for Josh Allen. All right, let's move to a guy that I was higher on, and that you were kind of coming in and be like, whoa, 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 let's pump the brakes here. And that's
Yep.
Baltimore Ravens tight end Isaiah Likely. I will go ahead and lead with what I thought was a good case, and then you'll go ahead and crush my dreams. So look, he's a 25-year-old tight end. Obviously, out of Coastal Carolina and the Chanticleers there. Played in 16 games last year, had 42 receptions, 477 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
Yep.
I'm really kind of enamored by the prospects, similar to, I guess, Kincaid, of the athleticism. The youth is there. And he really came out on fire when Mark Andrews was a little slow to get going. Now I've kind of come around to see that, once Mark Andrews really started to get healthy, we kind of saw him fade. So I'll kind of let you pick it up there.
Yeah, I mean, outside of week 1, where he had 9 catches for 111 yards and a tud, he didn't really have much else out of the season. There, he was probably the number 1 guy picked up on waiver wires after week 1,
Yeah.
and he didn't do jack shit until like week 10. You still got Mark Andrews there, and we saw this team really switch it over to King Henry and just pound the rock over
Yeah.
and over and over again, especially inside the red zone there. So I don't know if, while Mark Andrews is there, if Isaiah Likely is necessarily going to, really take off.
Yeah.
If there has been some rumblings that they may get rid of Mark Andrews, they may trade him or something like that. Hard to see that,
Yeah.
especially this coming season.
Yeah. Post
It's hard
draft.
to exactly. It's hard to say 2-3 years down the road, but as
Yeah.
long as Mark Andrews is there, he is their red zone receiving threat.
Yep.
And I just don't see Isaiah Likely like really excelling in that run heavy offense.
Yeah, no, and I think that's fair. And I think, if we're going to talk about Andrews here in a second, but if he does play even another 2-3 years, and if
Yeah.
Likely doesn't take over that spot, I mean, there's a good chance, it's
He's
likely
good.
that the
Yeah.
Ravens draft another guy, and
Right.
now he's going to be competing with a young guy. So yeah, that's why I was cool leaving him off. Then a guy in Kate Otten who we both like,
We
but I think
love Kate Otten.
we can agree that
There's only one football.
you've got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, and then they obviously drafted Emeka Ibuka in the first round. So
Yeah.
you've got 4 guys there, and they got Bucky Irving, who I think is going to be an absolute stud coming out of the backfield. So it's just
Yeah.
a lot of mouths to feed. He did struggle with some drops. I think he's talented. He's a consistent guy. I
Yep.
don't think he's a bad option, but I just think that there's a lot of mouths to feed in Tampa Bay. That's why he kind of just missed this list.
Yep.
All right, man. Let's get into the actual top 15 here for our 2025, Dynasty tight ends here. This is our call your shot tier. This is probably the one where we're going to have the most debate about, all right, who's cracking this top 15 and who's in there. So we've got Jake Ferguson slotting in at number 15 for the Dallas Cowboys. we've got Kyle Pitts, which was a bit of a controversial one in the pre-production show here. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and then the rookie Colston Loveland coming in at number 11 there. So why don't we start with Ferguson? I think someone who's going to be a little bit easier, and then we'll open up the Kyle Pitts can of worms here. What is the case for Ferguson cracking this top 15?
Yeah, before we even go to Ferguson, like this is especially in like this 11 through 15. Go ahead and throw that back up there if you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I think this is like where the dynasty rankings really differ from this coming season's rankings, because I think we would all agree Travis Kelce's probably still a top 6, top 8 tight end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mark Andrews is probably going to be up a little bit higher. But dynasty wise, is Travis Kelce going to be playing, more than the next couple years? Is Mark Andrews going to get, he's starting to get up there in age. I think this is his age 30 season too. So are those guys going to start taking a step back? But as far as Jake Ferguson, this past season definitely took a step back. Obviously, Dak Prescott was injured. I think he only ended up with like 59 receptions for like just under 500 yards this past year. I don't even think he got in the end zone.
Nope.
The year before, I think he had 8 touchdowns for like 760 yards. He was kind of their wide receiver too, basically in that Cowboys offense. So it's one of those things where until the Cowboys come up with a second wide receiver, he might return to that spot as long as Dak stays healthy. Now, that's a big if, obviously. And there's a lot of turmoil just on that offensive side of the ball with the Cowboys, or turnover on that side of the ball. Anyways, right? They drafted a offensive guard in the first round. We still don't know what their running back room is necessarily going to look like with Javonte Williams coming in there, and who's going to necessarily really take the handle with that. But I think with Dak coming back, Jake Ferguson does have the potential to really get back to that like 2023 season and start to excel a little bit more.
Yeah, no, and that's where you convinced me, right? It was the simple question of who else are they throwing to outside of CD, right? You've got Jalen Tolbert, Camonte Turpin,
Now there have been some rumblings that Amari Cooper, there might be like a little reunion coming down there, because I think he's still out there as a free agent. But until something like that happens, like you were saying, who else are they throwing it to?
And if they wanted him bad enough, I mean, he'd be there already, right? So,
fair.
All right, Ferguson comes in at 15. All right, now let's open up the Kyle Pitts can of worms. So I was a bit more Kyle Pitts. Now I've been someone who's faded Kyle Pitts his first 3 years in the league, or is this 4 or whatever it may be in his young career. Now, so our ages, I should have said this at the top. We're talking about age by week 1, right? So some of these guys may not be, this age because they've got birthdays in the summer or leading up to the season, but we're talking age by week 1, right? So he's only going to be 24. He's played in 17 games his last 2 seasons. He had 47 receptions for 602 yards and 4 touchdowns last year. He had 53 receptions for 667 yards and 3 touchdowns the year before. So he has, as much as once we basically took away the gold jacket as soon as he got drafted and kind of started lowering our expectations, he's been a top 15 guy the past 2 years. And, he's weirdly enough, increased his touchdowns by like 1 per season. So projections wise, we should be seeing 5 touchdowns next year. But I just think he's got a lot of talent. He's obviously, I'm a little biased with him being a Florida guy, but again, I was not drafting him at all. But now with his value, I mean, at least in redraft, he's going like pretty late in round 12 and things like that. So I just think value-wise, you might be able to trade for a guy like this and kind of see some ability here. I like Michael Penix, and I think they had a good connection last season. So I'm a little bit higher on him. So why don't you tell us why you were fighting to keep him out of the top 15?
Yeah, I'm done with him. It's just one of those things. It's just so frustrating. I was in a league last year that we didn't actually get to draft. The league basically drafted every team for us. And, he was a top 6 tight end in terms of the rankings last year. This dude just does not live up to expectations. Obviously, you have Drake London. He really started to excel last year. Darnell Mooney is down there. But this is a run heavy team. This is Bijan and your boy Tyler Algier's team. With Michael Penix coming in there, it'll be interesting to see how he continues to grow in that quarterback spot. He started the last 5 games
Something like
last
that,
year.
yeah. Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, again, this is a team that doesn't necessarily have a clear second option at wide receiver,
Mhm.
but this is a run heavy team.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know if Kyle Pitts is necessarily ever going to break into like that top 10 ranking. And that's where I think where we settled on him is probably a good spot.
Yeah. I just think that his value is just so much lower than in years past, and
Yeah.
it's not like he's been completely unproductive again. 2 top 15 seasons, so I
Yeah.
do think that he's set up to have even more involvement. And again, he's coming into the offseason healthy, which is a big plus, right? So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's hard to trust him, but I think this is a decently fair spot to put him.
Yep.
All right, next couple guys. I don't think we got to spend as much time talking about. Travis Kelsey. We know what Kelsey is. I
Yep.
think age and the kind of fear of retirement is really why he sits at
That's
13,
the
right?
thing. Yeah.
He's going to be 35 by week 1. There was already rumblings of, if they win that Super Bowl, maybe he's done. I think that's kind of where the fear is. And again, like you said,
Yep.
redraft, he'd be much higher up on the boards. But looking at that kind of 3 to 5 year projection, it's even hard to see him at the 3 year, right?
Right.
And definitely not 5. So he's not playing until he's 40. So
Yep.
anything to add on Kelsey?
I don't think so.
All right, and then Andrews. We could spend a little time on Andrews. We were talking a little likely and things like that. He is going to be 30, but even so, last year 17 games played, 55 receptions, 673 yards, and 11 touchdowns. And that was coming off the injury, but really that car accident in the beginning of the season that they kind of didn't really say was as big of a deal as it clearly was.
Right. Right.
And then
Very slow start for
very slow start.
Andrews.
Yeah, and then the year before, 10 games, but he still put up 45 receptions, 544 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So he was still kind of in that top 15, only playing 10 games. Really, I just think his touchdown ceiling is so high. With you already said it. I mean, he's the clear red zone threat in the receiving game for the Ravens.
Yep.
He's still reliable, and 30, it's up there, but I don't think it's anywhere where we need to be super fading him.
Yeah, and that's what that's the slight difference between him and Kelsey. Obviously, they've been 2 of the top tight ends for the past 5-6 years at
Yeah.
this point, and he's just enough younger than Kelsey that he gets that long-term boost when it comes to dynasty.
All right, why don't you tell us about your boy Colston Loveland, Michigan man? I know you're so happy. You were fighting for him in the pre-production show. So why don't you tell us why you have Colston Loveland? Why he's here at 11 with the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there were 2 tight ends drafted in the first round last weekend, and Colston Loveland going to the Chicago Bears. I think it's a pretty good fit because obviously you got new coach Ben Johnson,
Yep.
and he had a hell of a rookie year for Sam Laporta just a couple years ago. Now Laporta did a lot more blocking last year, didn't have as many receptions, didn't have as good of a year as his rookie campaign, but Colston Loveland is a pretty good size tight end. He's got some height to him, and his hands are just really, really good. Now they do have some wide receiver options as well, and I think that's part of the reason why he did slide into like this back 5 for us. But I personally am higher on him and his situation than the other tight end, Tyler Warren.
Yeah, no, and this was where some of our debate was. We did talk about coming off an AC surgery, so he's probably going to miss most of the off season.
Yep.
He's going to have to, and which for a rookie is kind of a big
Huge.
deal, but a
Yeah.
little bit more important for redraft. I don't think long term we have any issues. We did do it NFL rookies injury like profile on all the big names. I think we did like 9 or so or 10, something like that.
Yeah.
Check that out over on the channel there, especially if you're trying to look at what rookies, what have injuries risk and how big are these risks and things like that. So that was both an IDP and a fantasy one.
Yep.
But Ben Johnson and that potential, that offense is exciting. I just think it's a little bit similar to Tampa Bay, where you've got a lot of mouths to feed. You still got Cole Kmet there. I
Yeah.
think next season, it's going to be, I'm not expecting a huge year for him. But, with Ben Johnson and what we saw him do with Sam Laporta and with the prospect that Loveland is, I do, agree that he should be in the top 15. And for me, it's more so past next season. So this is where ultimately I think 11 is a good
Yeah,
slot for him.
and he's the youngest tight end on in our top 15.
Yep,
So I
only
think
21.
Dynasty wise, like you said, that's where he really excels because he's a great what's the word you used? Prospect. There we
Mm-hmm.
go. He's a great prospect. Just he's got some things going against him in this rookie year, but 3, 4, 5 years down the line, I think he's going to end up being like a top 5 tight end.
Yeah. All right, before we hit into tier 2, I got to tell you about some of the great sponsors we have here. Starting with Fast Draft. That's right, it's in the name, folks. Start drafting faster. Nobody wants to sit there waiting 30 seconds around, 60 seconds around. You know who the guys that you want. You know who you're targeting. You don't need anything more than 20 seconds, and that is exactly what Fast Draft provides. They make sure these drafts are done in under 10 minutes. And to make it even sweeter, use promo code use promo code plus. Well, it looks like I got the wrong. Well, you can use promo code plus. Use promo code plus if you want to be generous. You can also use promo code plus DGenDoc. It'll get you a $50 deposit. If you deposit $50, you get $50. So that's a $50 deposit match there. Again, promo code plus or plus DGenDoc. We got 2 options for you there. And then also make sure you check out idpplus.com. That's right. We've got all different subscriptions and memberships that get you access to different member-only some off-season content. We are football 365 days a year here at idpplus.com. Definitely going to want to check us out and also check out the YouTube channels here. And then finally, the best part about the off-season is the Fantasy Football Expo. Make sure you get your Fantasy Football Expo tickets today at the fantasyfootballexpo.com. All right, let's get back into our 2025 Fantasy Dynasty rankings for our tight ends there. Really just wanted to show off this cool graphic that Derek made that I completely forgot to show before we started. But hey, look, you
I
got your
almost called you out, but I appreciate you flashing.
yeah. You got to let the people see the goods, huh? So,
Sure.
all right, this is our new next tier here. Ole Reliable, right? I think these are guys that you can safely start each week, and kind of have some reliability here, which is, I mean, for a tight end position, I think is the name of the game.
Yeah,
Um,
especially there's less of them, and you typically only start one unless you end up with a couple of those maybe top 5 guys. You may flex one out,
yeah.
but why don't you go ahead and give your synopsis of Tyler Warren? You were a little higher on him than I was.
Yeah. So for those not looking visually, our Ole Reliable tier 2, Tyler Warren comes in at 10. Evan Ingram comes in at 9 now in Denver. Tucker Kraft for Green Bay and at 8. David Njoku at 7. And then our kind of probably surprise of the show, Jonnu Smith sitting there at number 6. Let's talk about the other rookie, Tyler Warren. Obviously drafted by the Colts. 23. He was definitely the more productive of the 2 players last season. He had over 100 catches, 1,233 yards, and 8 touchdowns last year. He's a great prospect. I think, you're going to see some people are going to have him really high, and we were kind of arguing this kind of a little bit back and forth. I
Yep.
think he is a really good prospect. He was a productive player out of Penn State. Again, over 100 catches in college is very impressive. I think the one kind of little bit of concern is less the player and more the situation, which I think you'll talk to more. So I think he's a great prospect. He's obviously young at 23, but this offense, the quarterback room specifically, does leave a little bit of a pause. I think there'll be a run on heavy offense that's going to sprinkle in the tight end. But why don't you tell us why you're a little bit concerned with that quarterback room?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's partially the quarterback room, partially the offensive line that's had some turnover over the last couple of years. But that quarterback room, AR-15 and Daniel Jones, like,
Solid, man.
yeah, if you're trying to like quarterback draws like every other play, I mean, both of those guys are at this point in their career probably seen as better runners than throwers of the football,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And you mentioned it. I mean, this at least should, you would think, be a run heavy offense. Now, it'll be interesting to see how they use Tyler Warren. He is kind of a Swiss Army knife, at least when he was over at Penn State. James Franklin just used him about every position
Yeah.
on the offensive side of the ball that he could have.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's a hell of an athlete. I just don't know if he's going to get much run fantasy wise because he is a pretty good blocking tight end. And they do have some other options at wide receiver to get the ball out to as well. But I just really think that they're going to get behind the running backs and try to pound the rock between them and their very mobile quarterbacks.
Yeah, might as well just run the wing T or some type of triple
Yeah,
option.
there we go.
It sucks because any other team, he could probably come in and take a couple QB sneak snaps, or I could see him doing stuff like that. But
Sure.
I don't think you're going to take out AR-15 or Daniel Jones. I mean, they're both pretty big. I don't know why you even would get somebody else to handle the ball there. So, all right, why don't you give us?
Although you could do something like the Packers. I think it's the Packers with Tucker Kraft. We'll put him in motion and then have him sneak under center and take a snap every once in a while, for like a quarterback sneak kind of a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
Tyler Warren, like we said, he's a hell of an athlete, and he did line up kind of in that wildcat type of a position every once in a while when he was at Penn State.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think another team. I think it'd be definitely locked in. AR-15 is already a big dude, so we'll see what they think there.
Yeah.
But Evan Ingram coming in at 9. This is a guy you're super high on. I do like him going over to Denver. Why don't you tell us why you're very optimistic with Evan Ingram these next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean he's a guy that was injured quite a bit, or most of the season last year. He only ended up playing 9 games.
Yep.
But the year before that, he was an absolute reception machine. He had over 100 receptions, and I think he's going to a better spot offensively with Sean Payton and Bo Nix. I mean, Bo Nix really looked like a veteran quarterback for a lot of last year, even being a rookie. And in Sean Payton's offense, historically, they like to use the tight end.
Absolutely.
So I do think Evan Ingram will be a good option, especially this is another team that doesn't have a tremendous wide receiver room. So he may end up being that, either vying for the top number of targets or kind of at least the second route, probably.
No, I'm right there with you, man. We talked about it in one of our off-season free agency shows. I think Denver really crushed it.
Yeah.
Excuse me, in free agency. So I really like this too. The only thing that gives me a little pause is he's going to be 31 at the start of the season, right? I think that's the reason why he's not a little bit higher on this board. But I'm also very pro Evan Ingram, especially for the next couple of years. Next 2 guys, Tucker Kraft and David Njoku. I think we can talk through pretty quickly. Tucker Kraft obviously burst onto the scene last year. Played all 17 games, 50 receptions, 707 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I know they have Luke Musgrave there, but he's a touchdown machine, and they were calling like tight end screens for him. I think he really is their over the field threat with all those receivers on the outside. So I think we're pretty aligned there that he definitely deserves to be there. David Njoku, he's a guy who's been productive. He dealt with some injuries last season. He's going to be 29, and I think he's got the potential to kind of crack the top 5 as far as talent wise. But
I think
got 5 quarterbacks.
There's 2 things working against him: the quarterback room. Who the hell is going to be throwing him the ball? And they did just draft Fannin out of Bowling Green, so it'll be interesting to see how they end up using both of those tight ends, because Fannin was an absolute reception machine in the college rounds. I think he led the FBS in receptions last year. So, I mean, Njoku, if he returns to like the 2024 version of himself, he very well could crack that top 5 or top 5.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right, here's the one I want to spend a little more time with. Jonnu Smith, Miami Dolphins, going to be 29 coming in. He had 88 catches, 884 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Season before, while he was splitting time with Kyle Pitts, 50 receptions, 582 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Man, I think Jonnu Smith is a guy who really fits this Miami offense very well. He did a lot of this without Tua Tagovailoa playing most of the season. And, Tua only played 11 games, and he still was able to put up these numbers here.
Yep.
I think he's the clear. I mean, he was the second option
Yeah.
last year. I mean, at 111 targets, him working over the middle is huge. I think he's got the speed that McDaniel likes there in Miami. I'm really big on Jonnu Smith. I think we're going to be higher than market on him
Yep.
here, but I think he's in a great situation. And he just kind of showed last season he's a little bit quarterback proof. So, what are your
Yeah,
thoughts here on
and
Jonnu?
I think it really helps that you have two of the fastest wide receivers in the league to really spread that defense out, and he just
Yep.
settles over the middle. But I don't think we can go without saying, like, what's gonna happen with Tyreek within the next year or two, right? Is he going to be in Miami? I mean, there's been all kinds of reports, and he's kind of come out and, like, sort of been wishy-washy
Yeah.
if he wants to stay in
Make a
Miami.
statement, retract a statement.
Exactly, and I mean, talking age, Tyreek's starting to get up there a little bit too, so
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what happens with that, but if Tyreek ends up leaving Miami, that even opens up even more space for Jonnu Smith, and dynasty-wise, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. I'm really high on Johnny Smith here. All right, let's get into our tier one, the big reveal for our top five, which for this position group probably isn't that exciting. So the set and forget tier, number five, George Kittle, big contract, George Kittle
Yep,
coming in, San Francisco there. TJ Hawkinson, Minnesota Vikings, coming off a season where he battled through that, rehabbing from the ACL plus injury. Sam Laporta coming in at number three. And then the top two guys, Trey McBride and Brock Bowers. They've got to be your top two. It's
yep,
not an argument. You can maybe argue, McBride over Bowers, whatever. But I think the top two are locked in. It has to be those guys.
yep.
So we'll kind of bounce around here. We'll start with our boy George Kittle, one of the most fun guys to watch on Sundays.
Watch and
Absolute
listen.
animal. Loves football.
Yep,
Loves beer. I mean, what's not to like about George Kittle?
he's a
Look,
dude.
he led the league in tight ends and receiving in 2023 with 1,020. He then put up 1,000, and he had a better season, 1,106 yards. It just ran into some guys like McBride and Bowers, but that was only playing 15 games last year. They put up those numbers with 8 touchdowns. You get rid of Deebo Samuel. You got Brandon Ayuk coming off the ACL. I think it's CMC and the Kittle show. I really think that Kittle's going to be able to kind of be the main piece for at least the next 3 years.
Yep.
What say you?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, especially getting rid of Debo in the offseason. Ayuk is going to be out for a little bit coming off that ACL. So I think, like you said, it's going to be the CMC show along with George Kittle. Brock Purdy's still a young dude, so you got a pretty good option at quarterback. Now Kittle, like you kind of mentioned, he is going into his age 31 season. He hasn't shown a lick that he's slowing down, and option wise, he's still that number one, number two option out there in San Fran.
Yeah, and he's a dude that's just gonna fight through stuff. Like
Oh
he
yeah,
played the last 2 seasons like way more beat up than
oh yeah,
the numbers show. So
yep,
the fact that he the minor injury stuff, I think you need a guy who's gonna really be out there and be able to produce
yeah,
despite some
and and
nicks and bruises.
and fantasy wise, he could be a guy that catches 3 for 80 yards and a touchdown, or could be a volume guy that catches 8 or 9 balls for a couple of touchdowns. So he's got a lot of different routes to
Yeah.
be a very, very solid fantasy tight end.
Absolutely. All right. Next guy, TJ Hawkinson. I think the why he's here is pretty simple. But let's talk. My question to you is, he's coming year two off that ACL plus injury.
Yep.
What do you expect for a guy coming off his second year? Is it going to be the same? Is it going to be worse? Where are we at here?
Should be better than last year. Typically, coming off of an ACL, that first year, we're going to see a dip in production. Most of the time we hear guys, say a year and a half, maybe even 2 years out is when they finally start to feel back to their full potential. They're really themselves.
Yep.
So, he missed the kind of that first 4 or 5 weeks last year. And even then, the 4 or 5 weeks after that was pretty slow getting back into things. He did pick it up a little bit towards the end of the season. I fully expect him to kind of get back to the TJ Hawkinson of old this coming season. Now you still have Jefferson out there.
Yeah.
He's
Jordan.
gonna, take the majority of the targets. He's probably the best wide receiver in the league. But Hawkinson is a great red zone option. He's a great guy over the middle that the incoming quarterback, JJ McCarthy, will have out there.
Yeah, exactly. And what
And
has
I
been
think that's probably like the one question mark we probably have about TJ Hawkinson. Like, what's JJ going to do in the NFL, right?
I think basically a rookie quarterback. Rookie quarterbacks love their safety valve and their tight end.
Yep.
JJ McCarthy played obviously with Colston Loveland, used him a lot, so I think that that actually helps Hawkinson. Maybe brings down
Completely agree.
guys like Jettas and Jordan Addison a little bit
Yeah.
there. How much is he going to be able to stretch the field?
Yep.
All right, Laporta, dude, the guy's just a touchdown monster. I don't think we need to spend time here. I think I want to wrap up the show with how did we get to Bowers number one over Trey McBride? Because I think there can be some legitimate argument there, especially with Bowers only being a rookie. So why don't you give your case for Bowers being over McBride, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, I mean, Brock Bowers had a historic rookie season, right? And
Yeah.
he did it with, like, by far probably one of the worst quarterback rooms in the league. You have
Absolutely.
Geno Smith coming over. He's going to get an upgrade there. And they really still don't have a great wide receiver room. So I would expect Brock Bowers to have even better year this year. McBride, on the other hand, you have a guy in Marvin Harrison Jr. that had a decent rookie season, but you have at least a wide receiver one talent there in Arizona. So he's going to be splitting some targets. Where Brock Bowers, on the other hand,
Yeah.
he's your dude.
Brock Bowers is the number one target in Las Vegas. There's no question about that,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Arizona, I think, Marvin Harrison Jr., you could start to maybe, but I think McBride still is. I think, to play a little devil advocate here, Trey McBride, imagine him if he actually found the end zone. He's only had 3 touchdowns his past 2 seasons. Doesn't really make sense. He gets
right.
tackled at the one a bunch. Like, he's right there.
Yeah.
So if he actually hits his touchdown production potential, he could be talking about definitely being the number one guy next season and seasons like that. But it's Bowers. He's 22. He's super young still. He's got all great years ahead of him. And yeah, the quarterback situation is much better with Geno Smith than Minshew, O'Connell. It was disgusting. They put Desmond Ridder in some games.
Yeah.
Like, that should just tell you alone that was awful.
Yeah.
So Bowers, I think, has to be.
And speaking with the quarterbacks, Kyler, will he be able to stay healthy in Arizona, right? So I just think that between that and between target shares, Brock Bowers is he has to be the number one guy.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. All right. That's enough time talking about a Georgia product there, but Bowers is an absolute stud. So he comes in at number one for our Dynasty tight end rankings. All right, folks. Look, this is the first of, obviously, we're going to do the rest of the offensive position. So I think we'll probably do quarterbacks next week. Just stay tuned to figure out what we're going to do there. But yeah, we're going to go through these Dynasty rankings. It's going to be similar show structure to this. Hey, we just talked about the draft up. If you want our instant reaction for the draft, who was our winning teams, our losing teams, who's the winners and losers, check that out on this channel here. We also went through, again, those rookie injury prospect, those profiles. Hey, my team just got a guy. I know he's got some injury concerns. Maybe a guy like Will Johnson, maybe a guy like Jahad Campbell. How concerned should I really be? So check that video out as well. And if you're into the IDP streets, which you probably are because you're on this channel, we've got our guy, Johnny freaking Football over there. He is doing DBs. I know Axton's knocking out some D-line linebackers. We're getting the rankings out for you guys. We know that you're fiending for them. So we'll be doing that.
And then on top of that, once we get through all of our rankings, we might do a handful more like injury analysis kind of things as well. So before the draft really, stole the show over the last couple of weeks, we went through some major injuries with some major players. So if you guys have any favorite guys that you like to draft in fantasy, or they're just on your favorite team, shoot us a message, drop them in the comments, and we can can get around to some of those as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, great point there. That's why I keep you around. Always reminding me to do good stuff. But yeah,
Hey,
as we
here
talk,
at IDP Plus, we don't take any breaks. 365 football. We got to throw some content out there somehow. So we might as well talk some major players.
Yep, exactly. So, all right, folks, on that same accord, we are talking football 365. So we appreciate any likes, comments, especially in this off season here. Likes, comments, and then also subscribe so you don't miss anything. Subscribe, turn on those notifications. All right, folks, from Professor Locks and the DGen Doc here at IDP Plus, we are out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.